Hello and welcome to Upward Trajectory. Today on the podcast, I am happy to invite Dave Bricker to join us. And Dave has explained to me, and we had a chat earlier, that he is a business transformational specialist through storytelling. And I wanted to have him on because his story really resonated with me. And I found it something that I think can inspire and help other people. So thank you, Dave, for joining us. And love to hear a little bit more about how you got into transformational storytelling.
I got into storytelling because I got into stories. After my first year of college, I met some wacky people who lived on sailboats. And I was a private prep school kid. And the notion that you could have adventures somewhere other than books or movies just blew my mind. And these weren't moneyed people. They were just people who had dedicated their lives to traveling, and they'd been in and out of all sorts of wonderful trouble and gone to places I'd never heard of. And when I found out that you could have stories of your own, I wanted that more than anything else. I wanted stories. So by the time I was a senior in college, I had my own small sailboat. About 6 months after graduating, I threw my keys into the bay, gave away my car, and took off for the Bahamas with a locker full of food and dreams and $30 in my pocket.
Wow, what a story. And I love how you bring up the point that these were not moneyed people. So they didn't have a lot monetarily, but what would you say? Would you say that they were fulfilled and happy?
I think more than anybody I'd ever met before.
Isn't that
I
strange and
think
interesting?
I think for all of us, there's this mythology that at some point you get past the struggle and you make it to easy street. And I think some people make it there and then they get bored. We see so many people find fame and fortune, and they find a lot of attention, and they find drugs and alcohol, and they don't know what to do, and they buy lots of Ferraris and things. And I'm not saying that there's a problem with being wealthy. We'd all like to be wealthy. But there are other people who embrace the struggle, and they do something creative and artistic with that struggle, and they manage to live life well in spite of the struggle. And those are the people who inspired me.
Yeah, and I also heard from your story that they embrace the adventure and really thrive through the adventure. Is that what you saw as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just a mindset where maybe you're traveling somewhere and you think, I wonder what's over that hill. I wonder what's down that street. And you just go there.
Yes.
And instead of just not looking to one side or the other and staying focused straight ahead and staying on the paved road, there's that little trail and you have to wonder, where does it go? And well, it's a little scary, but if you're not scared, you're not living your life. And you never know what's at the end of that trail and the people you'll meet, the things that you'll find. But I mean, to me, that's where life is.
Absolutely. So you're basically talking about let your curiosity reign and just go with the flow.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. And so you got into storytelling, you realized you wanted to have more stories in your life. Can you explain how that translated into a career for you?
Well, it took a lot of years of sailing, of chasing stories. And then it took some years to think about stories because, look, I've always been into storytelling in kind of mechanical ways. I taught graphic design at an arts university for 15 years. It took a while before it dawned on me that this is a form of storytelling, of visual storytelling. I've always been into writing, and in later years got into writing books and working with authors and editing. Hey, more storytelling, videography, video editing, writing code. These are all dialects of storytelling. But at some point, it dawned on me that this was storytelling and that the umbrella for all of these different things was storytelling. And as I got into the world of public speaking, because I was working with speakers, like in most things in my life, I kind of fell backwards unexpectedly into it. And then I thought, okay, well, storytelling is my subject matter. What's my unique take on that? How can I guide other people to tell stories? I've been doing it for so long, but I've been doing it intuitively. And that's where business transformation through storytelling began to take shape.
Okay, when you say intuitively, so when it maybe doesn't come intuitively to you, do you have any suggestions to kind of uh, get that going and build that up so that you're able to, tell stories? Do you have any suggestions for our viewers?
I think we all have stories inside of us, and many of us succumb to the demons of self-doubt. And the fact of the matter is, size doesn't matter. We all have stories. Anybody who's raised a child has a story. Anybody who's ever owned a pet has a story. Anybody who's ever worked in a cube farm in a corporate setting has stories. And it's very, we tend to diminish our stories and think, oh, I've never run a marathon. I've never climbed Mount Everest. I've never sailed across an ocean. I've never been lost in the woods. But metaphorically, we've done all of those things. And if we allow ourselves, if we accept our stories as valid, then we can find ways to make our stories metaphors for our listeners' stories, our readers' stories, our customer stories. And that's where the transformation happens. And that's where the leadership happens.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you use the metaphors, the analogies, you're in essence connecting with other people on a higher level. And I guess I'm equating this to a great movie you watch with a great storyline that you're just so immersed in it. But you're saying conversationally and interactively with people through communication, you can have this type of connection through storytelling. Is that what you're saying?
Stories are the most powerful connecting tools we have, because we're born, we're put in these bodies, and we reach the world through these eyes and these ears and these fingertips. And we have no reassurances that the way, what I call red may be something very different than what you call red on a
Perspective.
basic level. And when we reach out and we communicate not just something functional, but something meaningful, now we're sharing experience, we're sharing ideas, we're sharing this abstraction that, thoughts, feelings, ideas. These are just words that are conceptual carrying handles for something much huger that we can never explain. And when we communicate through story and we share meaning, then we have something much bigger, and we're not alone in the world. Nothing else does that quite like storytelling.
Yeah, that's a great way that you explained it. Can you give an example of maybe someone that you coached or a company that you went into and how you use storytelling to transform their business or their speaking career or something along those lines?
Well, I'll give you, there are a lot of ideas. I think one of the reasons I love working with speakers is that someone will come in, and in a very short time, I can transform the way they speak, the way they tell their stories, the confidence behind the way they tell their stories, and the transformation not only in the message. It's great to turn a mess into a message. It's really great to release somebody from the self-doubt and get them up there where they're not afraid to deliver that message, where they can turn that nervous into service. And there are a lot of examples of that where somebody just finds their message. But let me give you a practical business setting. And disclaimer, this was not my idea. I was on a team of people, and my job here was to be on the design team. This is something that happened way back. It was a big pharmaceutical company, and they spent $14 million on a website that their doctor audience said that they didn't want. They
Oh,
didn't
wow.
need. They said, we can get all this information on PubMed. And we did something very different. We created, because the website was for doctors, the story we told was a little different. It was very text heavy. It looked like a medical journal. The backgrounds were paper textures and things like that. It was very kind of tight and academic. It wasn't designed for the public. But we put all the information out there that we possibly could. We put all the risks of the drug, all the benefits of the drug, all of the clinical trials and studies and data about the drug. And we put all this information out there, and it was wildly successful in two ways. A survey revealed that 99% of the doctors loved it, even though they said they didn't want it. And the site was written up in the Wall Street Journal. Another thing that was very interesting was, at the time, the FDA said you had to disclose risks and benefits in equal proportion. The traditional way to get around that, and we hear it with pharma marketing all the time, is they'll tell you how great the drug is, and at the end there's this batteries not included, some assembly required, all models are 18 years or older, right? There's this, like, we're not supposed to listen. And it's really a trust destroyer. Well, the FDA said, wait a second, you can't do this. You're not disclosing benefits and risks in equal proportion. And we said, we are disclosing 4 times more risk information than benefit information. Do you want us to withhold the risks or hype the benefits? And the FDA kind of said, what do we do? This has never happened before. And we changed the way pharma products were marketed. So the company spent $14 million on the website, and they made $4 billion, honestly getting their market share, educating doctors about the kinds of patients that their drug was right for and wasn't right for.
Just by the spin of the story. Yeah. So you're fully disclosing and being authentic and honest, yet the way you're spinning it, you're showing the benefits in positive light through the story.
Well, we're showing the benefits, exactly, but we created a visual story that the doctors could embrace, and then we created, without commercial language, without commercial language, without disclaimers, without marketing hype, we put all the facts out there and said, doctor, we're going to give you all the tools to make the right treatment decision for your patient so you can produce the ideal outcome. That's a story that no pharmaceutical company had told before. Nobody trusted pharma companies. And actually, many doctors reached out and said, will you build a portal for patients? Which blew our minds, because doctors hate when the patient comes in and says, I just saw a commercial. Can you write a prescription for drug X? The commercial says, Damitol is the ideal treatment for my condition. And the doctor's thinking, great, now I'm competing with these Madison Avenue people. But when you establish the trust, when you tell a different story about who you are and that you're dedicated to patient outcomes instead of profits, then the profits came as a byproduct of being relationship worthy.
Wow, that's an incredible story in itself, and the spin on the story from the pharmaceutical product. I used to be in pharmaceuticals, so I completely understand where you're coming from. And yes, the distrust is fully there, and the selling via commercials is definitely a huge issue that they do not like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting world.
It absolutely is. So this is really fascinating. So the whole spin and the whole use of storytelling in your life. So what would you suggest if somebody's really interested in this and they want to dabble in it and try? Do you have any steps that they could take initially, or resources that they could go to just to try it out and see how they could better spin their stories?
Well, I have both of those. I'll give you the resources real quick. The biggest resource for people getting into storytelling for the first time is an organization called Toastmasters, and they have over 250,000 members in over 200 countries. It's a great program for public speaking. It's some of the most affordable professional development you can ever find. I think it's about $65 for a 6-month weekly membership. All the chapters are meeting online now because of COVID-19, so you can join. There's a chapter I'm involved with that meets on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to look up WinToast, WYNToast.com, but find a chapter near you so that when things open up, you can participate in that. And that's a great place to start. Philosophically, methodologically, where I like to encourage people is start with the outcome for the audience. Stories are always about people. Even if you might think they're about aliens or talking animals, metaphorically, stories are always about people. And if you're not talking about people, you're not telling stories. If you're not telling stories, you're not connecting. And if you're not connecting, you're not selling. And if anybody kind of got a bad attitude there about the S word, selling, we're all selling, whether we're on a date or whether we're trying to get a child to go to bed. We're all out there selling every day. We want people to like us. We want people to trust us. And yes, we want people to buy from us, but selling is not always about products and services. So I use it in the broader sense. So when you're doing that, stories are about people. Always think about what's the benefit, what's the outcome for the person that I'm speaking with. And I could get up there, for example, I could talk about my ocean crossing, I could talk about adventures at sea, and you'll listen to that for a little while, and after a while you think, this guy's up there talking about himself, and you're going to go back to scanning the world for threats and opportunities, because that's what we do. If at some point I make that ocean crossing about you being out on the seas of business or the seas of life, and the crossing, the journey that you have to make, all of a sudden you're there, you're listening because I'm talking about you. The old marketing adage says, sell the benefits, not the features. And this kind of gives legs to that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I do believe people check out as soon as they feel like, well, this person's just constantly talking about themselves. So it's you have to have that connection constantly through the story with the other person or the people that you're talking with.
Yeah, narcissism is the only disease in the world where the sicker you are, the better you feel. And we've all been to those Chamber of Commerce breakfasts where somebody gets up there and bloviates for a half an hour or 45 minutes about their company or their achievements or their degrees. And guess what? Nobody cares, because we have our own seas to navigate. And it's the speaker, the writer, the blogger, whoever it is, had better make it about the listener pretty quickly, or the thing falls apart.
Yeah, and those are the people you never remember. If somebody quizzed you on that person right after, you wouldn't be able to tell them a thing, because you just mindlessly check out when somebody goes into that mode. But I agree with you. The stories, it really brings you in. It connects you. You want more. You interact more. So this has been fascinating, Dave. Thank you so much. And if anybody's interested in how to connect with you, what would be the best way to do so?
Got two ways. Connect with me through my main website at storysailing, SAILING.com. Storysailing.com. There, I've got a blog there. I write about storytelling in its many forms, and there's a mailing list you can subscribe, and I'll hit you with something worth reading, I hope, every 2 weeks. The other thing I'm doing is called publicspeakersmasterclass.com, and I run a masterclass at 1:30 Eastern time every Sunday. And I've got a fun crowd of people of all different levels coming to work on their speaking ideas, whether it's the speech writing or the speech delivery. We have a lot of fun, and we do a 90-minute session.
Well, that sounds great. And then you also mentioned Toastmasters, which I think is fantastic. That's a great place to start. I always think of Toastmasters as, public speaking and improving your public speaking, but you mentioned that the storytelling is an integral part of that, which I never thought about that. So that's a great place and a great resource as well. So, well, thank you so much, Dave. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I'm sure everyone got a lot of inspiration and information from you. And if you want to reach out to Dave, make sure you go out to his website or his blog, as he mentioned, and we will see you on the next episode of our podcast. Thank you so much for joining Upward Trajectory.
Jennifer, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
I really appreciate it. I'm just going to head